process ng mga Pinoy, mga Chino, of Englishifying yung business process is patok, diba? Patok sa mundo. They like it. They like it when Filipinos sound like this, use their American accent. Tapos minsan nagpapatawa sila, so titigasan nila bigla. O kaya bigla silang, magiging seryoso. Tapos, we play around with it because we're experts of mimesis.
Episode 80. Welcome to the Rezbt-S Podcast. My name is Rez. And if you're new to the podcast, I welcome you. If you're a returning listener, same. What's different from this is it's just the second podcast of the week. I do 2 podcasts a week, so there's 2 episodes. Previously, in the previous nakaraang Rezbt-S Podcast, mostly the core of that was about identity, so I might stem off from that. Usually, hindi naman ako nagpapaligoy-ligoy pa. I just treat this podcast as the show wherein this could be your companion voice, companion content. Pwede mo isabay sa work mo, pwede mo isabay sa commute mo. It is about an hour long, so ang tawag dyan is about it's like the, and I'm sorry for mincing my words here, nasa intro part pa lang naman. It's the hot hour, diba? Ito yung, I guess, kung ano yung matirang init ng gusto kong pag-usapan in the podcast, dito ko nire-record. You're also looking at the video feed, a staple, consistent, and medyo useless video feed on Facebook or on YouTube, so you could just put that on PIP mode, picture-in-picture mode, or put it on the background, let it run, or better yet, let it run on your Spotify app or your Spotify tabs, and mix it with anything else, or just focus on it. Or maraming mga tao, they use podcasts as as a companion audio, companion content. It is audio-based, so mostly I don't really do anything on the video side. It's very much not as much edited. Minimal lang ang pagkakatagpi-tagpi ng mga music, background stuff. Visuals on the minimal na rin as well because I just want to get on with it. And I was just finishing, some edits or some postings. I realized I've been talking about the base Tagalog state or the identity of, ethnicity. And just to share a bit, I'm really actually reading on a lot of documentation on this technology. So the podcasting world has a lot of documentation. There's books out there, free books. I've been joining some groups. I've been joining some knowledge base, and then tawag dyan knowledge base. So sa Tagalog di ko alam masyado, kaya ako and this being sort of what a tech sort of language game kind of thing, you might learn a bit more mga Tagalog words, English Tagalog, whatever. But I just, for the benefit of this show, I just call it base Tagalog, and it's something that's really been making me happy for the longest time. I'm writing not a lot actually, very specific things about it. It makes me practice my honesty. It makes me practice sort of, what I really wanna focus on, and the topics that I really want to touch on as an aspiring public intellectual. And I've been posting a lot in the Rezbt-S Podcast Hub group. So if you're part of that, good job. I've been posting about that. Yung pinopost ko dyan recently sa ganyan is really, what is a podcaster? This is still a new thing for me, even for the listeners. So it being a new thing, talagang lagi kong dinedefine, lagi kong paulit-ulit na sinasabi ko na yung purpose nito, ganyan. So, the base Tagalog theory of everything postulates that, Tagalog accepts the English tropes, and in the same way it sees it, using the Shinto angular approach. Google mo na lang kung ano ibig sabihin ng ganun, yung angle na ganun, to just study what's been happening in a sense na current events, araling panlipunan kind of thing. Because I can't help it, we're part of a digital society now. Everything almost in life happens in a digital sense. I can't remember having my past lifestyle anymore. Dati nung bata ako, mas bata-bata ako, laman talaga ako ng clubs, laman ako ng DJ booth, laman ako ng electronic engineering booth. So yan yung mga mga practices ko noon. I've also been studying a lot of photography, framing, arts, ganyan. So that's my background, you know. Natuto ako magsalita because kinailangan ko, di ko alam parang I figured out that a lot of people, mga 10, really enjoy hearing my take on things that we all think about. And although in my music career, I've been exposed to a lot of DJs like jocks, right? My training has really been in speech, sort of self-learning lang, and maybe in the hopes that matutunan mo rin yung ganito sa pamamagitan ng pakikinig. And one of the greatest misconceptions in the listening world is that we don't have time for listening. Where in fact, sa katotohanan, the more you listen, the more you learn how to do it right. The more you learn that there's different parts of it. There's passive listening, there's active listening, there's maybe mixed listening, or maybe they're consciously, sa pakikinig natin, laging may judgment sa same, laging may awkwardness, like hindi natin mahirap, hindi natin mapipilit na mawala agad yun. But then, I get warmed up, I get hindi naman sa tinatamad or hindi naman siya sa disclaimer kind of thing. It's just really one of the things that you should expect from a podcast. It's really long form, diba? And I encourage you to take the whole thing, the full thought, diba? Na tinatawag. I usually start the podcast with some basic stuffs, maybe kasi you've been typing your way through the digital world. You've been typing, you've been expressing, you've been using your fingers a lot, your hands. And it's quite different now that I've been doing this for more than 6 months. I think almost a year na nga actually. So I've been doing this, right? And I realize there's iba yung expression sa pagtatype at pagre-record ng audio. There's di mahirapan, what's the word? Di ako makahindi dun sa power ng pagsasalita na live recording and real-time recording at mas progressive pa dun. Yun yung mga keywords na tinatawag, yung mga adjectives ko for this type of content creation and this type of technology actually, because yung iba mga arte gusto nila live, gusto nila ganyan, may live interaction, but then that sort of distracts me and defeats the point of recording really what I want to say, because syempre konting distraction lang, medyo nakaka-affect yun ng stream of consciousness. So in the other podcasts, in the previous versions of this podcast, minsan nadidistract ako sa lamok, may isang lamok lang na nakapasok dito. Anyway, or when, because ayun ko, hindi naman ata nakakausap yung mga ganon. At the same time, pag nangangati yung ilong ko, or there's a heat problem, or hindi ko masyadong natansya yung temperature in the studio, all this stuff is part of it. Anyway, you know my name already and the title of this podcast. And kumbaga yung pinaka ginagamit ko tong podcast na to is to communicate with the people who are willing and open-minded to be present sa ganitong type of content. It's different from, hindi naman ako ng loloko, hindi ko naman intent na magpatawa, hindi ko naman intent na manggago or It's really more of my exploration of my current state to be sort of at least feel that quintessential moment of the day, moment that we form by listening to each other or me assuming that nakikinig ka. So yeah, it's very ayun, and that brought me to the word gravitas. Ako narinig yun, gravitas. So if you haven't heard of that word, it's very important to have this gravitas when you do your serious stuff, your practice. And ang ginagawa ko naman talaga usually is go back to who I think I am, and then eventually evolve from a point in my life, which is now, I just whimsically and haphazardly even explore that diaspora, yung kasabugan nun, because words are very abstract. When when we think about the plethora or yung dami ng kung ano nung pwedeng pag-usapan or topics or comments or anything, it's really how we condense that, yung abstract na yun, paano natin kino-condense into smaller vials of, you get what I mean? And that's the thing that defines this podcast. Some of the podcast listeners love the podcast or have their own reasons of listening to the podcast, maybe because you know me personally, you've been in the studio, or you just want to experience something new, the voice power thing, using the voice obviously has its own experience na pwede mong i-explore. So habang ini-imagine mo na ako mag-isa lang dito sa kwarto ko, in this very sealed up part of my home studio, which I call Future Studio, right? As I explore that, I think the more, to be honest, the more that you learn about how I do stuff or how podcast is treated in general, how I treat my own podcast, parang ano yan eh, parang inaaral mo lang din yung substance, diba? So, hindi ko ma-imagine actually to be speaking Filipino this way ever before, Filipino before, because I realized, I only use 20% of that language. I use more of what I think is a new way of expressing things. Yan naman yung lagi ko sinasabi, a new way of expressing things, because that brings you to higher concepts, higher ganyan. And then if you're not, ayaw mo nung ganito, ayaw mo nung parang medyo pinapaisip ka, ayaw mo nung medyo parang vague, or gusto mo laging parang typewritten content, or you're not sanay pa sa hindi ka pa sanay na ginagamit mo yung iba mong senses, because listening is up there with music, up there with music. I don't literally anymore distinguish between words, music, and content these days. Anything that I can ingest is, for me, especially kung mahabaan, is literally a podcast. Especially kung may words, diba? I'm looking here at some of the parts of a podcast, because I do eventually want to share this technology with others. Or if you're already here for that main reason, na maybe teacher ka, maybe you're in the educational, academic, whatever, whatever, because, lahat naman tayo siguro, a good portion of the listeners of this medyo graduate naman na sa mga ganyan. Or you're just still using this for entertainment. I don't really mind. Yun, edi mas nakaka-excite nga yun eh. This podcast reaches quite a lot of new people, bagong tao. Modern, postmodern, mga talagang bagong tao na, alam mo yun, which I feel like is, as a host, diba, I need to be honest that my audience is a very wide, inamin ko naman, a very wide spectrum of people. So nandyan yung mga talagang experts sa recording industry, or in the other industries. Maybe you listen to me because you know that I'm a visual artist, or you've realized na natitrigger ka sa mga ganitong type of content, which is good. It becomes stimulus. Also, if you consider me as sort of a senpai, mga ganyan, or you consider me sort of I don't wanna put it in that sense, but like maybe someone who motivates you, or not me personally, this persona that I take on as a host, diba? Or just, you like what I like. You realize that we're in the same boat. Everyone's in the same boat, man. Everyone's like, it doesn't matter if you're from the South, it doesn't matter if you're from Cebu or Mindanao, or taga Mindoro ka, or alam mo yun, this whole archipelagical way of thinking doesn't matter to you, because you realize, ang Tagalog ay isang cosmopolitan, isang taong talagang nare-realize niya na, well, we all live in one world anyway. This is still in planet Earth, right? Yan yung demographic I reach. Kaya ako medyo binabaitan, medyo ginagawa kong PG kasi ayoko i-turn off yung mga, and I make it sort of fast paced because I don't wanna, to be honest, alam mo yun, I've worked with a lot of rappers. I worked with a lot of wordsmiths. Binahayan nila tong studio ko before. When I say a lot of them, both professional, aspiring, and failed or successful, lyricists, mga ganyan. So that's my background, and recently, since the dawn of music and podcasts, this whole hula baloo of discovering a new space, a new movement is my main inspiration. So kunyari natitrigger, I would say that word. I said that na pala. Kunyari natutuwa ka, 'di ba? Natutuwa ka or talagang, hey, I think this is for me. I think I could experience this with the host, with Rez and all the other people who stem from this. That's my gravitas recently. That's my I find solace in that, and nare-relax ako dun knowing that I don't have to worry a lot about if I'm doing well or not, or I don't wanna mire myself in my emotions because I am teaching basics of logic, how logic works. 1 + 1 will always be 2. It's only in a very rare case na diba? Kumbaga, easy maths. And I'm looking here at some of my notes. Pwede naman, diba? Dito meron akong screen dito, yung my laptop actually. And it says here that it's better to give a sort of a technical background than working environment. I've covered that already in a span of 15 minutes. So, I hope you don't mind me na ulit-ulit sinasabi ko yung ganyan para it's my way of pagpapakilala uli. Diba? Parang wala naman ako sa interview mode or discussion mode pa. I'm still on my monologic part. Isa sa mga insecurities ko actually is nagmumukha akong duling because I'm only recording with a phone. So if I'm not focusing right there on that really small, almost barely seen hole, which is the camera, the real camera, I'm looking at a screen that projects my image. So medyo may mga ganyang idiosyncrasies pa ako na I worry about, and wala tayong magagawa. I mean, I'm still saving up for new cameras, for new headphones, for eventually, my plan is to be able to guest more people. I have guessed some, and my friends, they're heavily invested in my podcast, obviously, if you've heard some of my other works. Diba, parang it's almost like they are stakeholders, diba? So stakeholders meaning the definition of a stakeholder is on a very basic sense, they share ownership with this type of industry or content. And it just means na gusto mo yun or you like that. Alam mo yun, parang wag na tayo diba? Minsan kasi nagpapaligoy-ligoy tayo bilang bata, bilang doon sa confusion ba nung pagpa-practice ng something new, parang nilalaro-laro pa natin yung yung tae nun, diba? I hope you don't mind me using these words, but like, I don't want to get there, If you like it, then you like it. If it's not for you, then go somewhere else, Go on not on YouTube, go on your favorite other favorite content providers. But ako, sa podcast na to, I'm really trying to practice myself owning it because a couple of years back, I've owned other spaces, I've lived in other spaces. One of the biggest criticisms of my criticizers, mga kaibigan ko, usually is that and my best friends tell me this na parang kulang pa daw ako before, maybe around 2-3 years ago, kulang ako dun sa owning my own space. It's because I have this philosophy, guys, of na panalong philosophy ko, which I do write about, yung space and people. So, space pati tao. Diyan nagre-revolve yung yung talagang mga gusto kong pag-usapan. And nakikriticize ako before na hindi ko raw talaga masyadong lenient sa tao, masyadong lenient sa space. Just for history's sake, and I share this with a lot of people. There was a time where I host parties, mga 50 people in a week. Random family, friends would go in and out of this studio, and we would party. We would learn. We would practice music and arts and collective building. Talking about all the other deep stuff that you might think of. And that's how I learned. Because that was my role for the longest time. And I own this studio. Ang naging technique ko is to be part of the studio, to be the wall, so to speak. Na parang ako lang, as if I would imagine that I am the genie in a bottle, diba? So to speak. But now, alam mo yun, nagiging na ako more about pagiging tao na ako eh. So, marami akong inaaral na kultura, marami akong pinag-uusapan na kung ano-ano. With that, I really want to welcome you to this small intro part of what it means to create a podcast. Ano ba yung mga pumapasok sa paggawa ng podcast? Ano yung mga kailangan mong i-take note ba bilang someone na it goes both ways eh, kasi di ko naman din inakala na gagawa na rin ako ng podcasts after 2 years of just being into it eh. So you never know, right? You never know. Maybe once you get your camera, your mic, your recording system and matuto ka konti about how to record yourself, your own voice. Pag nawala na sa'yo yung parang confidence problem, then talk to me, talk to any podcaster you know about it. I'm sure they could help you out. With that, I welcome you to the Rezbt-S Podcast show. Welcome to the Monologic series. This is my 20th monologue for this series, and it's all available on Spotify and on YouTube and on this page as well. So let's get on with it after this short break. Thank you so much for being here. All right, welcome back to the Rezbt-S Podcast. My name is Rez. I am leaning forward on my table, trying to behave and really check out the details of all this. I wanted to start again with, I started with Gravitas, I think. Yung parang naging theme ng first segment. And I talk about Gravitas and identity and what it means to have a solemn way of doing things, of practicing things. Ewan ko kung di mo pa to na-encounter dahil siguro ibang klaseng sipag yung na-experience mo mula sa mga pagpipilipino. Pero, lumaki ako kasi, my parents got married in Hong Kong, My parents got married in Hong Kong. Actually, that's a very big part of who I am bilang taong nagpapakilala because malimit ako sa Hong Kong nung bata ako. We would go maybe twice a year. Dalawang beses ako nakakain ng maraming beses ako nakakain na ng Peking duck. Maraming beses na ako, na napagkamalang inchik. And then, I miss it. I miss going there. And I bring that up because kahit ano pa namang definition mo sa sarili mo, basta mukha kang Chino. And actually, Chino, alam niya ng mga Chinese Chino. Chino ang tawag actually. It's a very, very important word that we almost forget na part ng kultura natin, diba? Being Chino. Ano ba yung Chino? T-S-I-N-O. It means Chinese Filipino. Chinoy, diba? Chino. And it's a very nice word, 5 letters. T-S-I-N-O. Chino. Because in application, I remember, punta ako sa Hong Kong. I was in Hong Kong with my dad. Depende yan eh. Minsan, Hong Kong ako mag-isa. Maybe, I've done that maybe once or thrice. Up to maybe 4 times. But when I was one time with my dad in Hong Kong, bumibili kaming ilaw. Kasi supplier kami we were supplying for I think another multinational back then. So bumili yung tatay ko ng ilaw, sobrang daming ilaw. Tapos nagbabargain siya, in our own Chinese kind of like well, I would call it base Tagalog now, but because it sounds like English, diba? Kung paano ka magsalita with minsan pag nakipag-usap ka sa, lalo na sa mga taga-Hong Kong, marami na din Tagalog dun eh. Ewan ko na-realize nyo yun. Kinuwento ko sa ibang podcast. Anyway, the specific moment in Hong Kong na nanonood lang ako sa tatay ko conversing with some Chinese, with this Chinese store owner. And then they were bargaining. They were bargaining about the price, diba? Kunyari, sige, bilhin ko na to ng ganitong presyo. Sabi ng tatay ko, hindi, ganitong presyo lang. Kasi dun sa kabilang store, ganito lang benta sa akin eh. Tapos nagko-compute sila ng discount. You know, when you talk with a lot of Chinese people, usually, not a lot, I mean, with any, actually, magandang base talaga yun. And when you're talking business, meron kayong calculator sa harap nyo, and then you make your computations because it just makes sense to base your communication on math, diba? Because wala namang mag-aaway pag pinakita ng calculator na this times this equals a certain value. So nagmi-meet doon agad, diba? Yung example na yun is a very keen way of expressing logic, even regardless of nationality, regardless of race and identification, you know. So natawa ako doon sa moment na yun because sabi nung store owner na taga Hong Kong, sabi niya, ikaw Chino ka. So ganoon siya. Sabi niya sa tatay ko. Tapos tawa naman. I really recorded that as a kid, you know, but sabi niya is like, ikaw Chino ka. So that was one of the first experiences na to be recognized and to be able to identify with that sort of reality na even pala yung mga Chinese sa ibang parts ng mundo, whereas, you know, Hong Kong is also part of the Philippine history if you really think about it. They recognize our being Chinoy, being Chino, Tsino, and that's what I am, you know. That's because I think my mom's half Chinese if I'm not mistaken. Parang ganyan. Marami namang ganun, diba? Marami namang ganun. Actually, ang joke nga, even with, you know, loved ones who have explained this, who are in any part of the world, San Francisco, New York, or anywhere, the other people there, other cosmopolitans, really struggle around with defining what it is to meet a Filipino in nationality, diba? Yung nationality kasi sa Filipino kasi, mukhang Chinese, mukhang Asian, pero yung apelyido usually Espanyol. And it's because for the kids, just to review, sinasabi nila na 330 years tayong barbero, 330 years, napakasakto naman. 330 years daw tayong sinakop ng mga Espanyol. Siguro kasama yung mga Portuguese doon. Kasi I'm not sure. Kasi Portuguese ba si Magellan? Hindi ako sure eh. Pero you get what I mean, diba? Na those types of Europeans, matagal nila tayong kinupkop. Matagal nila tayong inakay. So a lot of that creates the whole name game of what it is to be Filipino, diba? Yung apelyido system natin is may halo talagang kung hindi ka nandun sa mga one syllable type na Chino, it's really more on the side of Espanyol talaga, Spanish, diba? So my last name is actually Spanish and it means sword in Spanish, diba? Your Spanish name might mean the very common example is Cruz, which is cross, or Sampuno, diba? Ibang puno yung mo. In my case, this is for me a good way to what do you call that? Explore, diba? Yung explore ko kasi yung sa project ko sa Sang Chinchuche, I realized, you know, the very first character there is Sang, which is the syllable for mulberry, which is a type of puno na ginagawang papel. And when I realized that almost 10 years after creating the project, Sangchinsuche, talagang pinag-isipan ko when I started writing that in calligraphy and I started signing my name in that as Bradley Chong, my pseudonym, there's really deep meaning there, you know. There's really I took it as a transformational thing na because I was lost as a kid, because I didn't know how to define myself. Am I a singer? Am I an artist? Am I a painter? Am I a ganyan? Sometimes, ano tayo eh, minsan ano ka eh, sobrang creative mo. You identify with a lot of things, diba? Eh ako naman, and I hope you get what I do mean about this, diba? Parang na, once you focus or once you sort of, na ano mo na eh, pag nasanay ka na, dun sa kung ano yung tawag mo sa sarili mo, minsan gusto mo dun ka na lang eh, dito na lang ako sa identification na ganito. For me, it's base Tagalog talaga. Base Tagalog talaga. And I like it. I really like it because, for a time, even in 2020, I think a lot of Americans had to recognize that the population of Filipinos, even in America, speak a lot of Tagalog, right? And they say it like that, diba? Tagalog. Sa ating Tagalog, they say it as Tagalog or Tagalog. And I'm excited by this, and I'm excited by this reality, that the katagalan of that. Diba? Kasi matagal nang ganun, guys. Matagal nang ganun if you are more into how to resonate with the international version of who we think we are. And if you kind of want to resonate with that, babanggain ka pa rin ng ano eh. Ang isa sa mga pinakamagandang na-discover ko sa pagbe-base Tagalog is babanggain ka pa rin nung ganong reality, the linguistic reality. Kumbaga, the word system that we use, kahit naman sobrang galing mo na mag-English, kahit pa ano ka pa, Englishero to the max ka pa, pag dumating ka na dun sa deepest and maybe highest parts of what you think this linguistic kingdom encompasses, is Tagalog is still there. Especially if it runs in your blood, especially because you can't not talk about ethnicity in anything, pag may kausap akong may ibang ethnicity, kita mo eh. Kita mo sa mata eh. Diba? Kita mo na, kita mo sa dila, rinig mo sa dila, diba? Rinig mo sa the way they use their, blood to express themselves. And I hope you are not put off by that, because these days, I don't know. I'm not sure even if this is an issue for us, but the issue of ethnicity, racism, of having differences as a nationalist, di natin maiwasan na it affects us. And I think it's up to those who have the capacity to think as international citizens to really teach that to those kids who have yet to understand that. Because I was literally problematizing this like yesterday, to be honest, na yung mga kabataan, mga young chikitings ng mga Filipinos ngayon, kung hindi TikTok dancer na medyo bading-bading, alam mo, not in the homosexual way, but they learn from Korean pop culture, right? And if that's not a problem for you, then I'm not saying that that's a problem for me. But I'm saying that might be you. That might be your friend. That might be, baka mismong kapatid mo ganun na lalaki. And that doesn't mean na bading siya, or doesn't mean that if you have a sister who resonates really well with anime culture, for example, then she might act like a boyish Japanese girl, right? Or like a boy, she might look like a girl, on the outside, but deep inside there's this brooding Japanese boy inside of her. This happens, this happens with the way we talk about identity and the way we see how identity forms in our children, in kids. And I really want to put this on the table for now, because I realize some of you may be listening and then your children might also be listening, diba? Ganun tayo na yung nangyayari sa show na to, guys. Minsan may mag-ina, nakikinig, or may magtatay. Alam mo yun, I don't really mind, because one of the basic tenets of having a podcast is really being open enough to being open enough to anyone, to a whole spectrum of people na makonsider mo na baka and I encourage this for you to actually, share this with your mom, your pops, because ganito na rin yung lifestyle ko eh. Whatever I want to discuss inevitably in the podcast, minsan na kukutuban ng mga housemates, di ba? Nakukutuban ng mga kung sino man yung talagang kilalang-kilala na ako. And then, doon naman sa spectrum, sa other side naman na hindi pa ako masyadong kilala, it's just something that helps them define the content and define the kung ano ba yung nangyayari sa isang podcast na pwedeng pumunta kahit saan man. Pwedeng pumunta bigla kasi minsan bigla akong naaalala yung kapatid ko. Bigla akong naaalala yung mga kakilala ko sa Japan, mga kakilala ko sa Hong Kong. Di ba yung ganun? Kung bata ka pa, minsan, actually, nung bata ako, hindi ko naman sa tinarget yun. Pero it was inevitable, that I could resonate pala even with, diba? And this is the cosmopolitan way, even with anyone who lives like 1,000 miles away from me, us, we can resonate with them. And kung di mo naman dadalin dun sa pagkakaroon ng Tagalog solidarity or pagiging tao, pagiging, pagpapakatao or whatever, it's really because we speak the same type 1 civilization language, English is recognized as a type 1 civilization language, or it will be meaning universal language regardless of where we take this world, if it becomes post-apocalyptic, kung magka-zombies, kung magka-gera pa man uli, knock on wood. I mean, English will always be there, and just to dig a little deeper into this, there's I forget the title, but it's the Netflix documentary about mga katutubo, mga tribesmen na, when they started translating their language, ang go-to, kumbaga yung pinaka-go-to is to figure out if they have in their language a sense that is the same with our language. Since we speak English, diba, parang iisipin mo sa kahit sinong gusto mong kausapin, the thing that you establish really is a concept of good and bad, not evil, good and bad, which is like tama o mali, diba? And if they have that, it means that from there you could connect na anything that you want to talk about, right? Tama ba naman na mangulangot sa podcast? Mali ata. Pero ang kati ng ilong ko minsan talaga eh. Or tama ba naman na kusutin ko yung mukha ko or yung ilong ko or yung bibig ko or yung di ata. Pero alam mo yun, just have to be honest about stuff, man. And this is how podcasts are made and practiced, and I try to make it easy for everyone. I really do. And if you appreciate that, leave a like right now. Inaaral ko talaga yung mga ganitong bagay because without a prior knowledge of how this thing could be done, how this thing could be conducted, kung paano ba sinasagawa, diba? Yun lang naman kasi yung main reklamo ko main reklamo ko sa pagsasalita is that yung Tagalog minsan sobrang matumal eh. Parang matumal dense or like slow when it comes to pagtatagalog. Kasi I didn't wanna make a show that just exemplifies, maybe padipan sa pagtatagalog. May mga kaibigan ako na magagaling sa ganyan. Pero ako personally, hindi ako magaling sa ganyan. Magaling talaga ako sa English. Pero nagsimula rin ako na barok. Diba? Lahat naman tayo nababarok. Which I like now because a decade after that, we are now realizing that we all type in English, man. We all read Twitter world that is most likely 80% in English. And then, natututunan natin paano talaga i-combine or gamitin yung mundo na yun, that world of forms, dun sa pagsasalita natin, sa paggawa natin ng content, sa pag-explain natin, sa pagsusulat natin, pinapabilis natin, pinapabagal natin, ginagawa nating rap, ginagawa nating kanta, ginagawa nating something of we could use to be competitive, right? Or to be on it with like other people. And then you realize it's just skill, right? It's just skill. At the end of the day, it's just skill. Ganun pala trained yung dila ako Wala tayong magagawa. Gamitin ko na lang din, diba? Or it applies to anyone who can speak, applies to anyone. It's just that I go on a deeper level and I'm kind of sorry about it talaga because like, ganun talaga yung bilang aspiring intellectual, ganun talaga yung mga pinag-uusapan ng mga intellectual Minsan, they fight about translations, they literally argue and form even in the scientific world, diba? Diba kaya naman even in academics, which a lot of people are canceling out now because asan na yung academics na natutunan natin after this pandemic, diba? It's still a sensitive topic, but what I mean is the good side of that is meron namang mga avenues para magamit pa rin natin kung ano yung gusto natin talagang sabihin or iparating. And then my sort of technique just to para dun lang ako sa amin side, diba? Is I don't literally touch on it because for me as a what do you call that? As someone who appreciates that, yung gusto ko lang ganun imbis na madali kasi yun pag binabasa mo. Madali yun pag binabasa mo or why am I saying this? Because first I've been ingesting a lot of Asian knowledge in form of audiobooks. So napansin ko, ingit ako sa audiobooks, man. Naingit ako sa audiobooks kasi sobrang ganda ng audio. Sobrang ganda nung pagkasulat, sobrang ganda nung timing, it's all laid out and shit. And I realize as a writer also, that it's because they're literally reading off the text. Whereas ako, I'm riffing, I'm surfing on my flow right now, diba? Yun yung difference ng podcast or podcasting in general with audiobooks, but it's still they're both kind of like long format content, diba? Pero malapit dun yung audiobooks, right? And yung tick ko right now is like realizing that I could be reading a lot of things to you right now. Pwede naman na I get a piece of tula, for example, and then basahin ko. It would have that feeling, but yung practice ko right now is just to be honest about what I am thinking because it creates for me, it creates for like an experience that could be better shared. Ayoko naman kasi i-share na yung sa tingin ko at alam ko naman na nakikita nyo na lang din sa feeds nyo. Gets nyo? My logic pushes me to be honest with where I'm at. Yung maging tapat ako dun sa kung saan na talaga yung inaabot ko gamit yung utak ko, diba? Kung, alam mo yun, this show isn't about, dissecting what I already know or what you already know. In fact, mas gusto kong gamitin yung show na to, yung Rezbt-S Podcast and I hope more people would do this actually. There's not a lot of people who have the inkling to do this. Maybe they're warming up to it or I don't know. There's complexities to it. Pero ang sinasabi ko lang is like, nagagamit ko din pala yung ganitong platform, yung ganitong teknolohiya dun sa mga gusto kong express na ganun na I am actually very, very grateful nowadays that dun sa ease of use and the additional quality of life that a podcast show, a personal project adds to my life and how I understand things. So if that's kind of vague or like kind of not so warm to you or medyo lukewarm, it's because that's really what I'm into recently, and it's this dichotomy of being wise versus being cynical versus not being confused kung ano ba yung marketing kung ano yung literal na nahuhulog sa harap ko or nahuhulog sa kamay natin or sa harap mo or sa because lahat ng bagay ay nahuhulog, everything cascades and everything sort of just falls into place. That's one of the best ways I can explain why
I like talking about logic. Smiley face. All right, I'll see you guys in the next segment after this break. My name is Rez, and you're listening to the Rezbt-S Podcast. Welcome back. My name is Rez. Laging ganun, no? Iniisip ko talaga kung ano nang pwede kong sabihin na iba Welcome back. This is the Rezbt-S Podcast. Wala ganun talaga or kaya welcome back, kids. Pero hindi kasi minsan matatanda na yung kinig sa akin or matatanda yung nakaka-appreciate ng podcast. And then yung mga kids naman, ayaw naman nila natatawag na matatanda. Diba? Kasi bata pa sila Or alam mo yun. So I don't know, man. You should comment. You should let me know what you like to be called. Pero sa akin kasi mga kaano-ano ko lang din naman kayo, diba? Mga ka-digital native. So I really appreciate that side of it's not well defined, but it's like there. It's just there. And that's part of podcasting actually. That's part of the fun of it. That's part of, if you think it's jargon, if you think it's paulit-ulit or whatever, it's a way of introducing to you what it means to have monitoring, what it means to have like mic in front of you, or what it means na magpadala dun sa kung ano yung gustong sabihin ng boses ko right now, or saan ako dinadala nung pagsasalita ko. Kasi I do wanna admit that I'm performing a role, diba? I'm assuming a role. I'm assuming a persona. In this case, di maiwasan, kahit ito yung pangarap ng nanay ko para sa akin, not literally my own dream, is like to be able to teach people or to, not teach just, mas gusto ko pa yung Tagalog maggabay, magturo, alam mo yun? Because like, when I'm not mired by the complexity of definitions, of the heaviness of specificity, diba? Di man talaga ako teacher, di man ako professional, diba? Pero I have, like some of you would, what do you call that? Have pointed out na meron akong reach Hindi ko maiiwasan diba? Rockstar ako hindi ko maiiwasan na pagturo talaga ako just in a snap, diba? And may nakikinig naman. So, walang naman tumigil ako hanggang may nakikinig, diba? Nakikinig yung girlfriend ko, nakikinig yung kapatid ko, alam mo yun? So, hindi ko pwedeng, I can't just drop that. And I've done that with several other of my projects. Music Man or project with other people. And I felt sorry, diba? I felt sorry because when I can't commit to something. But then, nowadays, I am very much, obviously, not just committed, but obligated and also addicted to this form of giving out the vibes, sa English, yung just being able to share consciousness with anyone who's willing and able to learn from audio content, diba? And my way of sharing about that, and I'm smiling in the feed right now, is to diss on or to belittle sort of the other forms of content, na short format, o kaya ulit-ulit loops, or comedy masyado, na corny naman, or alam mo yun, because minsan talaga nasasawa ako sa ganun. And nasasawa ako sa ganun because it doesn't kumbaga, pag nabore ako sa ganun, then it should work harder for me. Whereas in my own show or in this show, I work doubly hard to revert it back to about what I previously discussed in the other podcast, why it's important to have an identity, to renew your identity, to renew your ganyan, and to keep it light, diba? Just for this segment, because you're back na. Diba? We're all back now in this I'm thinking about this because literally I've been watching mga old anime and just new anime. Tas ang banu nung drawing, hindi nung animation. Minsan ang banu din ng animation, pero iniisip ko, ba't ba ganito sila gumawa ng anime, diba? Minsan talagang sinasadya nila yung parang, lang, isekai na naman, okay, Alam mo yun, niisip ko from a creative point of view, niisip ko, ba't sila ganun, di ba? But not sila, but then ba't ganun yung pagkagawa ng ganong type of content, right? And I realized, it's an answer to that is just because we're Asians, man. We're we're uh, we're in this cyclical, paikot-ikot na pattern of just being Asian, man. We've been Asian for the longest time. And I'm not hating on being Asian, or it's just that it's a reality, man. It's just like you know, it's there's fun in that as well. And may bago dun eh. Yung bago nga dun is basically na yung sinasabi nila or naaaral ko recently when I talk about culture is that ang Filipino now resonates so much with being Asian, 'di ba? Ang Pilipino nare-recognize na natin na hindi lang pala tayo basta-basta yung identity natin is nasakop tayo ng mga Espanyol, ng Spanish, ganito yung nadala sa atin na ganito, blah blah blah. It's all like from the kumbaga hurt of the past. And though I'm not the expert in that, I'm sure you know um you know what I'm talking about. It's because I came from that. I came from that reality na nung lumalaki ako, yun yung laging pinag-uusapan, yung 2K Pinoyism na sinasabi ko, na pinagpapasapasahan lang yung identity of what it is to become what you are, what we are. 20 years has passed, nagbago na yung gobyerno, nagbago na yung kung sino-sinong ng dumating na pwedeng, we talk about music that has influenced us. I personally have been to different parts of the world to discover more about my music career. And then, that changes me, That changes me in the sense na ayoko na yung poverty porn identity ng pagiging Filipino. People have written articles about that, why poverty porn never really works for here because it's like an insult to those who are in poverty. Yung mga tao namang in poverty, alam naman ng lahat ng mga tao ngayon na kahit naman mahirap ka or mayaman or anything in between, we're all digital natives now, di ba? Nakakaintindi tayo ng kung ano-anong trope, kung ano-anong arc, kung ano-anong language, kung ano-anong content. Di ba? It does sound like a rant, but then when less and for me when less and less people talk about that reality, then wala tayong mapanghahawakan na modern, na totoo, na kontemporaryo, right? So now me talking about that, it just feels good, diba? Na man, 10 years ago, Pinoy pakita sa mundo, blah blah. Yeah, we all get it, man. But then, diba, we still had back then networks that sort of milked the shit out of that trope, out of that arc. And I'm like, as a electronic artist, diba, doon ko na-realize na man, bakit Europeans enjoy synth music a lot, That's one question. Second question, bakit Asian cultures practice a lot of meditative, long-form space philosophies like feng shui or minimalism, mga ganyan. That's 2. Then 3, bakit ngayon sa Pilipinas, it's like we have a difficulty to understand or ground ourselves in the fact that these questions are just up there, diba? It's because we don't have the language to answer that. Na when what I mean by that is pag sinasagot natin usually and patama to sa mga advertisers, sa mga nag-iisip ng talagang role ng pagsasalita, ng pagbigkas. Whether you are a lyricist or a marketer, you're a copywriter, or a publisher, you're whatever, you're a writer, whatever, man. I don't care in the sense that you have to eventually bubunggu ka dun sa tanong na, bakit di ba yan napag-uusapan? Bakit hindi yan yung naging basis natin for good types of content, for good types of discussions, right? It's because I realized we don't have the right language for it. We don't have the key to, diba? The key was never revealed in the Filipino arc trope 2K Pinoyism, because that's just marketing of who we think we are. What we really are is Tagalog based. Now the language, if I coin it as based Tagalog, then you get what I mean? That I could form literally a new theory of that. Diba? The repetition of this purpose-giving statement lang is what I want to yun yung dig ko kumbaga. Ito yung tinitingnan ko. Let's say, imagine that we were in a mine, right? In a cave where we are limited because magugunom na yung mundo. We are limited to writing the very best of our knowledges to the very best of our capacity, skill, and knowledge. Ilalagay na natin sa cave wall natin yung gusto nating itagasa ba to na matututunan ng ibang or next generation, 'di ba? Para astig yung show, para merong purpose na pwedeng tumagal. Para long game, 'di ba? My ambag for that is based Tagalog, right? Na after 10 years, I think if you're thinking about this thing, na ma-realize mo na, after 10 years of speaking Filipino, na magsubaybay ako sa Filipino shows, so Filipino ways of saying things, of Filipino ways of understanding this and that, is wala akong natutunan. Yun yung pinaka-main dun. Wala akong natutunan from the Filipino trope. Why is that? Because it's an end trope. The end game of that is to self-actualize as a Filipino, and I'm not touching on patriotism or anything. I'm touching on what it is in a phenomenological level, right? Or in the language game, so to speak, na it's very limited, man. It's very sort of, it's not postmodern. Yun ang pinaka-sinasabi ko. Whereas magtagalog ka lang, iisipin na nila agad, galing magtagalog nito, o kaya galing magsalita nito, para siyang tumutula, para siyang rumarap, para siyang gumaganyan. It's because we're in the postmodern world, man. We're in the, it is true that, diba? Yeah, so that's where I'm at. Na parang sa tingin ko, by using base Tagalog, that accepts all these other things, the science of it all, the logic of it all, diba? Na hindi na natin kailangan ipilit na being Filipino equals not discussing what computers have done for our lives. When I started this show on video, I started it audio only, guys. If you remember, and then I started it on video with I would like to experience myself or recording myself as like a eureka moment na, we need, especially during these times, whether you regard this as end of times, a restart, new game plus, whatever, man. Basically, we have to realize that we have to embrace transhumanistic ideals. Transhumanistic meaning that the human form, our way of living now is very much affected and I forget the transhumanist declaration. That's very much searchable, diba? A bunch of futurists wrote that down, right? And I declared it a year ago that I want to base the podcasts on that, or my podcast on that na. Man, this is so transhumanistic, right? Because like, I am literally in transition of talking about being human while using what I know now as just human stuff. Having a mic in front of yourself, expressing yourself to not madlang people, because it's such a Filipino thing, right? Yung parang masa-masa o mga ganyan. So what, man? So what kung nakakatawa ka sa masa, or so what kung belong ka dun sa what you think is the way of the many, kung literal, diba? Right now we are very much isolated. We are very much just consuming ultra specific ways of expression, ultra specific information, ultra specific words and
and may rules of the game. Even in my podcast, I have these rules na, diba, kunyari, kung di ka naman pala sobrang fluent sa English, huwag ka makinig dito kasi I'm super fluent, man. And I'm like 80% super fluent in English, so that's why I use it as the complementary latak of what I think is base Tagalog. And that allows me to express things and study things sa trope na to. Gamit yung approach na to. Diba? Diba? When I say diba, ina-assume ko lang na na tama. Sa tingin nyo, tama rin yun. So leave a like. So if you like what I'm saying, anything that I'm saying here, or inabot mo yung thing na you like, or just inspires you or whatever, just leave a like. Or natawa ka, leave a like. Or na share mo, diba? Or quote mo ako. O kaya cut mo na, diba? Kuha ka ng Facebook downloader, cut mo na, lagay mo na sa folder mo. I don't mind. This is like, open content, and even if you upload it anywhere, it's probably in the future I could detect it. But then I would have other podcasts by then. Okay. That's my monologue, right? That's what I monologue about. And kaya ko yung ginagawa is because a few months back, when it was a bigger problem for me personally, I literally told myself that kailangan kong magtiwala na in the future, mas mare-refine ko siya. Sa mga susunod, sa ibang panahon, mas masasabi ko ng mas maayos, mas refined, mas magandang words, mas piling-pili na. Ayun nga. Kung ano man yung purpose ng ginagawa ko dito will matter in this space, man. It will matter in this sort of context. Because if I don't do that, then parang parang kung ano man yung mapulot mo dito, baka hindi mo na matrace back. Baka hindi mo na malaman na, dyan rooted yan. In the same way that I root myself up in basic principles of speaking what I think is true for me. Because if I don't speak what I think is true for me, then how will I expect others to treat me the same way? Diba? When we communicate, because diba, nagkakaroon na ng mas magandang version or mas magandang parang mood of communication dahil sa mga ganitong bagay. And then I realized that it's a good thing, right? It's a good thing. I could relax on that. That could be my bedding. That could be, I could sleep sound at night knowing that hindi ko na kailangan ma-depress because I resonated in the past so much with what it means, what they said, what it means to be this identity. So as I identify more as a base Tagalog artist, doon naman na-drive sa akin yung, ito kailangan ko gawin. Kailangan ko mag-aral ng konting calligraphy. Kailangan ko mag-aral ulit ng konting lost arts, automatic writing. Kailangan ko mag-aral. Kailangan ko i-practice. Kailangan kong i-dikit-dikit itahi-tahi dun sa pagiging, kunyari ikaw, BPO worker ka. O kaya yung mga kumakausap sa akin ng mga, napilitan lang kayo mag-BPO. What is BPO? BPO is business process outsourcing. So, I have this very profound way of expressing my enthusiasm, actually. I'm not being sarcastic. Baka ma-take out of context na naman ako eh. My enthusiasm for the BPO world, diba? Na talagang ginagawa tayong BPO central ng mga multinationals eh. Marami tayong call centers, marami tayong mga ganyan. It's because the process of Englishifying, yun, yung process ng mga Pinoy, mga Chino, of Englishifying yung business process is patok, diba? Patok sa mundo. They like it. They like it when Filipinos sound like this, use their American accent. Tapos minsan nagpapatawa sila, so titigasan nila bigla. O kaya bigla silang, magiging seryoso. Tapos, we play around with it because we're experts of mimesis. We're experts of copying what sound is and what it means and how that sort of morphs and transforms who we think we are. We're escapists, diba? We're natural escapists of what it is to be this, right? We're
we're naturally escapists about it, 'di ba? Parang iniiwasan natin yun na malaman ng iba na ganyan pala mag-isip tayo. Because then they would be able to define us, right? Ayaw natin yun eh. Hindi natin kultura yun. Whereas, for example, to contrast that with strong Japanese culture, strong Japanese traditional culture, or even Chinese culture, or even Korean culture, they literally are in a point of their civilization, of their race, na very specific na yung nila, very specific na yung qualities nila of being that. Sa Filipino, sa Pinoy, sa Tagalog, sa mga tao dito sa capital city, Metro Manila people, we're just cosmopolitan about it. If I'm being honest, what I really think is that, we don't want to be defined by that. Diba? We don't want to be defined by what we eat, what we consume, how we want to be defined by our everyday lives, our everyday feelings, diba? Because at the end of the day, if nadadala tayo yung emotion nun, yung parang, yung emotion nun, di ba? Parang, totoo naman hindi naman tayo sobrang rich na country, hindi naman tayo sobrang advanced, di ba? Kahit ako, di ba, bilang artist, kahit anong pilit ko na I've acquired a fatalistic, defeatist kind of mindset as well na kahit anong pilit ko na mag-progress, gandahan, or maging at the bleeding edge of any technology, of any industry. Kahit anong try ko, man, I'm still just 30 years old. I'm still just, I can only influence this much people. You can only see what I'm capable of now, diba? Yung capacity ko for now is to just record a hot hour of a podcast, right? Because anything beyond that is like, too much na rin for me, and it doesn't jive with my project, diba? Parang, kumbaga, I have scaled it this much to, my word for it is hot hour. Mainit na oras, diba? Ito na yung oras ko eh, diba? Ito na yung, parang ganyan yan eh. And like, diba? And I hope you understand me more because I grew up performing for teachers. I grew up performing for friends. I grew up performing crowds, man. Crowds of people. Almost on a weekly basis to the point na tinuturuan ako paano magpalusot sa mga teacher ko kasi kukunin ako ng Coke, kukunin ako ng ganito, kukunin ako ng San Miguel, kukunin ako ng ganyan for a night to perform to thousands more people. And kakanta lang ako ng the same freaking thing, right? Alam niyo na yung kanta na yan, diba? Mga kanta na yan. So, being trained like that, ang gravitas ko na ulit is like, na-acquire ko na yung ganitong confidence to create this kind of show. And this is my way of giving back, This is my way of saying that, hey, when I perform this role, when I'm on this role, this is what you get. This is the value of this is the value that I can give. I mean, hanggang dito na lang. Sa tingin ko, that's part of that. That's what makes Rezbt-S Podcast good for me, and I hope it's good for you also, because there's gonna be more episodes, there's gonna be more changes, and hopefully better ways of expressing things, and creating as a real thing, between you and me. My name is Rez Toledo. You're listening to the Rezbt-S Podcast. Please do watch this on Spotify. If you have the new Facebook Watch app on your TVs, on your smartphones, or whatever device, maybe you're listening to it from a UFO, diba? Ano mo lang, konting search mo lang, SOME, or type in that very specific 4-letter character, that na medyo uso sa friends ko and I, diba? I minsan sinostalk ko yung iba kong kaibigan. Ginagawa nyo na rin pala to, yung may Asian version na tatak, diba? So I really appreciate that. I do add some memes or visuals about. So if you're just listening on the Spotify on audio base, maybe you want to check out the vidcast version, or you want to see my face every once in a while. It's all well and good. Maraming salamat sa mga nag-share and like, and
patuloy na tumatangkilik ng gawa ko. Please do join the Rezbt-S Podcast Hub. It's a small search on public Facebook. Just join it, and you can find more info there. You can find more features there. And I guess I'll end with that. It's not super hot. So it's the right temperature, I guess. And then from my space, my home to yours, I bring you this piece of whatever this is. Thank you so much. See you guys in the next episode. Out.